saw it, but it's a copy
Sure,
of it.
sure. They just swapped it off on the Air Force. They didn't ask. Now, Don Berliner told me when the NICAP did the UFO evidence in 1963, or he said these two guys came over and they wanted copies, and he said, and if I ever saw somebody that should have been in the CIA, it was these two guys. They said he said they were not inconspicuous. They looked just like they worked in the CIA. So that's what he said about them. But later on, the CIA did contact Dick Hall. They went to his office. He showed them UFO cases. I guess he let them borrow them or made copies for them. And they told him that they were going to see if they could get him a clearance because they wanted to discuss something about UFOs that it would be classified. So they were going to get him a clearance. And that is in the CIA stuff, in the documents they released, is the thing about getting him a clearance. So they never did.
You mentioned Don Berliner.
They never did discuss. They never did discuss anything classified with him, though. They didn't come back and do any discussions. So
now Don Berliner,
but they did.
You mentioned him. He did crash at Corona, and I know that back when I was before I talked to Don Berliner before I started heavily talking with Stanton Friedman. Okay, Don Berliner. Now, do you feel like that you've done any data collection on Don Berliner because you mentioned him? So tell me how you.
Well, he was working for NICAP.
Okay.
So he was working for NICAP, and so I stayed at his place one time when I was down in Washington. Yeah.
Great. So did he have his own archive like you?
He claims not to have very much stuff. I asked him about Foo Fighters, and he had some stuff he had collected, so he let me have that. So
that was prior to 47 Foo Fighters, folks. If you
40,
Foo Fighters, because we're going so fast. I know you're doing a great job. Thank you so much. Everybody needs to understand that Jan's been doing this a long time. And Don Berliner, like you said, he was an author. He was born in 46. He's 5 years older than me, I believe. So you knew Don Berliner, and he was in NICAP, and you stayed with him, and you got some stuff on Foo Fighters. Now, is that the original orange orbs or gold orbs? Explain to people, that was during the war, wasn't it? Korean War, they saw these orbs.
No, well, this is during the Second World War. There were all kinds of things seen during the Second World War. Keith Chester has been to the National Archives over 100 times looking for items on unusual objects sighted during the Second World War. So he has a real extensive file on Foo Fighters, which he has given to Barry Greenwood. And he wrote a very interesting book called Strange Company, which is about the Foo Fighter, about the Second World War, UFOs in the Second World War. It started off from before the Second World War started. I mean, UFOs have been around for a long time. And in the Second World War, there were quite a number of them, not knowing what they were, the military did some studies about them. In fact, after the war was over, General MacDonald, who was the head of intelligence in Europe after the war ended, in the Air Force intelligence, he did a study, and Keith Chester found his report to the Pentagon in there, and they had asked a lot of German scientists and military people about Foo Fighters, and they denied all knowledge, and they had, of course, gone through they had seized multiple technical documents from the German Air Force, and it seemed that people that they talked to, the Germans had seen Foo Fighters too, and they had no idea what they were. So it was both sides. But anyways, General MacDonald's thing says, we can't conclude what these things are. We just can't.
Let me get Thomas Becker in here. Thomas R. Becker, I'd like you to talk to Jan Aldrich, and this is a good time because he said that the Foo Fighter files is much, were turned over to Barry Greenwood, who's been working alongside Jan Aldrich, and we'd like to get Barry back here. I'll just have to, Jan, you'll have to tell me how to get in contact with him because I didn't call him direct last time. But Ahmad,
right?
Have you got any questions for Jan, or help us move along here?
Well, not
it's a really good historical event here.
Well, I really don't have much questions about the Foo Fighters. I mean, we have reports from several different military organizations about them happening during the end of World War II. And they're not as... once in a while you'll hear something about, a glowing light bouncing here and there, but most of them seem to have evolved into something more than just lights.
Yes. There's actual the cigar-shaped objects, and there's since the British have released some of their files too. I mean, essentially, what we've got lights and we've got UFOs, just like we have today. So
now, Jan, I want to ask you how you would classify, being that you're an old ufologist. I saw it was about 1984 over Rochester, New York, out over the Great Lakes area, was a white bright light, and it sat there with a lot of witnesses, and two orangey red, I would say more red, shot straight up, and then another one followed. They sat together, and then one went out to the right and one went out to the left and sat there calculating something before they each flew off. And they were, I don't know, when you're looking at a big white light, it's not like a star when that high. It was low, just above the trees and not up to the clouds, so to speak. It was mid-evening. So it's a huge white light with two orangish red like CUFO balls or whatever the orbs are, or maybe they would be drones, but they looked like they were intelligently guided in the way they went straight up very fast, like they were shot out of this white thing, and then went up and then moved real quickly over to the right and left before they took off. Now, that was my sighting with my children in Rochester, New York. Have you heard of anything like that? Two reddish-orange orbs shooting out of a white light in '84?
Yeah, sure. It's well, there seems to be a number of things where they where smaller UFOs merge with bigger ones.
Okay.
We call them satellite object cases. Right from 1947, they were noticed. Actually, World War II, they had a few cases like that. So, it's not. It's kind of rare, but it's not completely unusual.
I haven't heard anyone else describe them but me, but I know that me and my children saw it, and I reported it to 911. And then later on, when I moved with the Navy over to Hawaii, they sent somebody with MUFON to New York. MUFON people came to investigate. I guess they were with MUFON. They said they were, but they came to a meeting where we drew it out on a board in Hawaii at the University of Hawaii. Several people attended, but it wasn't official. It was more of a UFO Association meeting, not a MUFON meeting. In other words,
right.
People that I gathered there that came to talk about, we called them UFOs. We didn't know what else to call them, so that's what we called them. So you have heard of that. That's good. That's really good.
So
all right.
It is, this fellow named Herb Taylor has collected several hundred of those type of cases.
Well, good. So, you'll have to put me in touch with him because so many people. We've got to get who's who and who's collecting which stories, which I'm not up on. I just now have time to start devoting more time to research.
So he has started moving his files to Greenwood, to Barry Greenwood. So.
Oh, really? Is it because Barry's younger? And the old guys are passing on their archives?
Some of them are. Some of them are just. Some of them are young and they want to get out, or some of them are just. We're just exchanging stuff with people.
Okay. Explain that.
Project 1947 is 25 years old in a few weeks.
My goodness. And you originated that with the backing of Robert Bigelow, is that correct? Or no?
I arranged that with the backing of the UFO Research Coalition. Robert Bigelow gave the money to the UFO.
Okay.
Bigelow didn't back me,
Would you explain that? Because there's a lot of misinformation out there about that transaction with Mutual UFO Network, but you personally know about this organization. Can you tell people about that? Because it's important in ufology and UFO history to understand.
Well, the UFO Research Coalition was made up of CUFOS, FUFOR, and MUFON. And Bigelow said he would fund worthwhile projects. And so, when the...
And he was just into it. He, from the time he was young, was interested. I don't know his story, but are you familiar with Robert Bigelow's story? I haven't interviewed him.
No, I'm not. But what happened with the UFO Research Coalition was that he supposedly gave money with no strings, and the three organizations would select what kind of projects they would do, and I put in for Project 47 to look for more material on to further investigate 1947, and everybody thought that was the best one, so and there were other things there. I mean, they did abduction research and they did other things, but I think I was first out of the box, and they decided to do the second volume of the UFO evidence, and so there were a number of projects that were done, and Bigelow gave the money until he decided he should be more active, and